So we finally finished our Super Mario Maker 2 analysis, and it somehow ended up being an hour-and-a-half long. And while we do hope that you watch the entire thing if you haven't already, we get it. It's 90 minutes long, which is why we'll also be breaking it out into segments. And we'll be starting with a portion about how the height of your level might not be exactly as it seems. But in the time since we finished our analysis, we've discovered another interesting detail that might support the idea from that video even more. And we're going to tell you all about it as soon as we get through the analysis segment. Now, if you've already watched the analysis and just want to get to the new stuff, go ahead and skip to the 3-minute and 10-second mark. Otherwise, let's get to it. We noticed an unusual emphasis on verticality in the trailer. We have this scene, of course, with a trio of arrows pointing straight up, along with the new twirling wind enemies, and then there's this ghost house scene again, where the camera scrolls straight up. Now, as a reminder, in the original Super Mario Maker, you could only make levels up to 2 screens tall, which isn't a ton of vertical space to work with if you want a scrolling stage. Now, as I said earlier, and bears repeating, nothing in this trailer violates that concept. But this ghost house clip sure does cut it close. Okay, check this out. In the original Super Mario Maker, the background of the ghost house featured 2 rows of lights between the floor and ceiling. And since the background appears to be identical in Super Mario Maker 2, apart from the new blue color, we can use it to tell where exactly in the stage this portion of the level takes place, at least vertically. So at the start of the clip, we can see that the lower pair of lights are almost off screen, which means we're already quite a ways into the upper section, and it's not long after that the second pair of lights then come into view. Now, if you take a look at those lights positioned in the original game, we can see that there are only 2 rows worth of space above them. And if we go back to Super Mario Maker 2, we can just barely see what has to be that final row of tiles. And while most of them appear to be empty, we can see a coin in one of them, as well of course are wall tiles on either side. You know what, it might be easier if I just recreate this room in the original Super Mario Maker. Ah, there we go, much better. Now you can see exactly what I mean. We're at the top of the screen. There's nowhere left to go. And yet the scrolling screen shows no signs of slowing down. And even worse, there appears to be no exit at all. And there's no room for one above either. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. What about the warp pipe right there, Andre? Well, unless things have changed since the original Super Mario Maker, it's impossible to enter a sideways one by jumping or falling into it. So we can probably rule that out, unless there just happens to be 2 invisible blocks in front of it that we can't see right now. But assuming that isn't the case, what's going to happen if the screen reaches the top? Or more specifically, is there even a top? We can't help but wonder there might be a hint that there's even more going on up there, which would mean vertical levels are now a thing, as in levels that can go beyond 2 screens tall. This would be monumental, and would really open the floodgates to the possibilities you can create in Super Mario Maker 2. Or maybe Nintendo's just trolling people like me looking way too hard at this. But even if that isn't the case, what's going to happen at the top there? Can you have the screen scroll back down, or will it just lock into place? It's impossible to say for sure, but it makes you think, doesn't it? And could this possibly explain some of the weird background changes we noticed? Perhaps to accommodate a taller configuration? Okay, and that's about where we wrapped up that segment in the full analysis. But since then, we discovered something else that's peculiar that's incredibly easy to overlook. Take a close look at how the camera moves in this scene. Or rather, how it doesn't, at least when it comes to the horizontal axis. Yeah, it doesn't move at all. And that's pretty unusual by Mario Maker standards, because in the original game, it always tried to keep Mario in the middle of the screen when in a non-auto-scrolling stage. Even the smallest movement would cause the camera to shift over to keep him in the middle. And that still seems to be the case based on every other clip from the Super Mario Maker 2 trailer. Except for this one, where again, there's no horizontal movement at all. Now, there were 2 exceptions to this rule in the original game, the starting and end points of each stage, in which the screen physically couldn't move any more to the left or right respectively. So, could that be what's happening here? As in, could this portion of the stage be happening at either the beginning of the stage or the end? Well, we recreated that portion of the stage in the original game to find out. And as you can see, the camera doesn't scroll at all as long as we're on the left side of the stage. Which makes sense as there's nowhere left for it to go. However, as soon as we cross the midway point, as marked by the arrow here, it begins to follow Mario. And yet, in the Super Mario Maker 2 clip, Mario most definitely crosses over that center arrow, by up to 2 tiles worth at the end. And yet, the camera doesn't budge an inch, at least horizontally. Now, there was a similar behavior in the original game, only for the opposite axis, where you could create levels that had no vertical movement at all, as long as you didn't put any objects in the top half of the total area. Or put another way, above 1 screen's worth. So this leads us to wonder if there might be a similar option in Super Mario Maker 2, only for the vertical axis. As in, the screen won't scroll horizontally as long as you don't place anything beyond the width of a single screen. That would explain the unique camera behavior here. But if that were the case, it wouldn't really make much sense as an option if you were still restricted to a mere 2 screens tall, right? Which is why we wonder if vertically focused levels might be a possibility now, as the Ghost House clip also seemed to be hinting at. But there is one other possible explanation for this, because do you remember how I said that the screen won't scroll at the start or end of the level? Well, if we shrink the level as much as possible by moving the flag all the way to the left, we can actually fit both the start and end points onto a single screen. And sure enough, that gives us the exact same non-scrolling behavior seen in the Super Mario Maker 2 clip, as there's literally nowhere else for the screen to go. But if that were the case, shouldn't the goal be visible in the Mario Maker 2 clip? Well, not if it were set up in the secondary sub area, which lacks a proper starting and end point. So it kinda looks like I just blew a hole in my own theory, right? Maybe. Or maybe not. Because for one, this would be a very specific and odd behavior to showcase in the reveal trailer were designed in this way. Especially for a level that already seems to emphasize verticality based on the multiple arrows pointing up and even the whirlwind spawning enemies. But of course, that doesn't mean it's impossible. But then there's the fact that the background here doesn't match up with the start of the one in the original game. Do you see that thick structure with a shining spot on the left side of it? Well, that structure is not quite in the same place in the original game, with it being located farther to the right. Now, that very well could mean nothing. After all, we already noted in our analysis that some backgrounds have been changed, including this one. But again, we can't help but wonder those changes might be because of a new vertical option. But look, it's impossible to say for sure either way. But we really do hope that the trailer's hinting at the ability to create levels that are more than just 2 screens tall. And with that, we're about done here. But if you want even more, like say 87 minutes of it, make sure to check out our full analysis, which goes over tons and tons more. And with that, thanks for watching, and of course make sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already for tons more on Nintendo and Super Mario Maker 2 specifically. We'll catch you later, bye.